Aloha students, and this is Dr. Janet Six speaking to you from the island of Maui, and I am going to go over our final project guidelines and rubric in great detail so there's no confusion as to what I expect from this project. So enjoy this thrilling video tutorial. So I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but basically you should have gone through this document very carefully in order to understand exactly what we are looking for. So I'm going to now go over it bit by bit. So obviously you've learned lots of different competing theories, perspectives, methods, models, and a lot of terminology that really help you understand cultural anthropology. And now I need you to demonstrate the mastery of those things that you learned in this course. So what's really important for you for you to get a good grade in this paper is to really define and explain fundamental anthropological terms, concepts, and theories, as it says right here. Don't just throw out terminology without defining it and explaining it. Pretend I do not have a PhD in anthropology and explain it to me as if I knew nothing about it. So that way I know you can understand the concept. If you just throw terms around, it might not be clear to me that you have a grasp on the definition and how these things function. The next thing I really need you to do is demonstrate critical thinking skills. What I do not want in this project is a film review or a film critique. I can watch the film. What I need to see is you using anthropological skills and through that lens of anthropology really thinking about this film. And I want you to demonstrate critical thinking in your analysis. And by using terminology and these concepts and terms, I want you to take a look at this film through a totally different eye or different lens. The next thing that's really crucial is demonstrating communication skills. Obviously, writing, grammar, punctuation, they're all important. But also, I want you to think short and sweet. Brevity is the key to clarity. It's a fancy way of saying keep it short and sweet, but there's nothing like that. And I don't want long-winded sentences that are vague and flowery. I really need you to tell me what you're trying to say and then provide clear-cut illustrations of those themes that you're punching, like whether you're saying if you're doing kinship, I want to see clear examples and communicate to me exactly the concepts you're talking about. So this is very, very important. This project was divided into milestones. Everyone should be caught up. If you're not, please get those milestones into me as soon as possible. I'm going to go through the prompt here. We as anthropologists conduct research objectively as we can. And so I want you to sit back when you watch this film and watch it through, again, a new set of eyes. Now that you have this new language, this new vocabulary, this new understanding of concepts, I want you to look at a film and really think about it critically and with an anthropological lens. I do this all the time. I watch films from the past and I'm always looking at the changes in culture, the use of cell phones, the way people dress, language, and so I watch films very differently than I did prior to studying anthropology. So what's important here is to take into consideration the major themes. So I want you to use terms such as enculturation, talk about language, artistic expression, these kinds of things, political systems, all these things, globalization. If you still need help identifying themes, you need to get a hold of me ASAP. So key terms are important: theories, the methods, and the varying perspectives that we've discussed in class. The film you've selected may not have every one of these things that are listed above, but include as many as possible in your analysis. So key terms, kinship, enculturation, subsistence strategies, all the kinds of things we've been talking about, politics, religion, different social organizations, and then talk about theories, gender and different ways we've looked at globalization and modernization and industrialization. And then methods, if that's appropriate, if there's a way to talk about the methods, anthropological methods, or if you see some people are doing films that have archaeology, you can talk about that. And then if you want to talk about varying perspectives on kinship or on gender or on marriage, oftentimes I watch a film and I see that women are really portrayed a certain way now that I have a better handle on gender. You'll see oftentimes girls are in pink, or you'll see girls women being portrayed as in the kitchen, and so you can look at that the critical eye as to gender theories. I always like to watch Desperately Seeking Susan, which was a Madonna film in the 80s, and if you notice, every shot has pink in it, which is a little nod to gender there. Again, it's important, really important, that you include two outside scholarly sources, and we've got the Anthropology Research Guide offered here through the Shapiro Library. There's a link right here in your rubric. Click on that. It'll help you find some credible journal articles and essays. So if you're talking about kinship or you're talking about social structure, you could go ahead and find articles that support aspects of what you're talking about and make sure you cite them, include them in your paper, and make sure you have a bibliography. Do not cut and paste. I want to make sure that you quote and cite or paraphrase. Thank you very much. And if you have any question on how to do that, you have AP and text citation references here. They also give you a great link here for developing a thesis statement. So your case study needs to include the following elements, and I'm going to give an example of the film The Descendants, which was starring George Clooney. It came out a couple years ago. It's based here in Hawaii, so of course it has a theme that I enjoy. And it's really about a land case what was going on, a fictitious land case going on the island of Kauai that had to do with descendants of Hawaiian royalty. So it's a film that you would come in and I would first provide a brief synopsis of the film. I would talk about, this film is set in Hawaii and it takes place with a fictitious king family and a modern day land dispute where they have the pressures of globalization and modernization, and they want to develop this kind of pristine land on Kauai. I would want to make sure I'm very clear about my specific cultural values, norms, worldviews presented in the film that I'll use in the body of my paper. In the case of The Descendants, I would absolutely want to talk about kinship and inherited descent. I'd also want to talk about rites of passage. There's a big death that happens in this film. And I would probably want to talk about maybe political views, or, I could talk about the Hawaiian monarchy versus the modern United States democracy. A number of different things would fit this, but I would want to state those up close, and I would talk about cultural values, norms, and worldviews early on in the paper. Then I would want to connect my analysis to my course. I want to develop a clear thesis statement for my analysis, and I would want to follow that. So I want to state, the reason I chose the film The Descendants is it provides a great chance to look at kinship in Hawaii, the status of inherited land, and rites of passage, including death, or whatever your thesis statement is. Make it clear, connect it. Then connect your thesis statement to the course material in the body of your paper. Make sure to draw on your concepts that you got from Mind's Edge. One of these concepts is culture change. Very important. So describe how culture changes occurs throughout the film or in a selected scene. In the case of The Descendants, George Clooney early on talks about how he and his family are haole as hell, which means even though they're native Hawaiians, they no longer speak Hawaiian, they barely speak Pidgin, which is the creolized language locals speak in Hawaii, and really are much more aligning themselves with the European descendants. And so in the case of this, there's change in the culture as it shifted from a traditional native Hawaiian culture to a much more culture of the West. Also, there's a scene where his wife passes and they throw her ashes over a canoe with a lei. That's a common ancient Hawaiian practice that's still practiced today. So even though it's juxtaposed against the modern city skyline of Honolulu, you could talk about changes in death and the way people look at death, and some of the continuities as well as some of the changes. Then you need to apply at least 3 anthropological theories, themes, and perspectives in the course of your film. So since I've identified my cultural value as the importance of extended family and kinship in Hawaii, and the normative view of land, and I talk about the worldview of ancient Hawaiians as a reverence for the land, and the modern people of Hawaii often as seeing as land as a commodity, then I would go in and I would use 3 anthropological theories, themes, and perspectives to really go over these that I introduced in my introduction. And so you need to talk about cultural relativism, acculturation, globalization, all these different things, religious organization. Depending on the film you're watching, you're not going to have all these, but you need to have at least 3. Okay, clearly defined, and then I need you to illustrate your observations by showing samples from the scenes from the film, dialogue from the film, a theme that runs through the film. I need you to tell me what you're analyzing and then support that analysis with documentation from the film. Okay, so you can't say, hey, I wanted to look at kinship, but they never really talked about it. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. You need to make sure that you have lots of examples, or at least several examples from the film to support your statements. The one thing I really need you to talk about is how you change your view on this film, watching it through an anthropological lens. For me, as a trained anthropologist, the PhD, I look at everything critically now. I can't watch a television commercial without looking at product placement, gender, all the things that go on in films that have changed the way I view films. Before I used to let them kind of wash over me. Now I'm more active with that film. So how did it change the way you viewed your film? In the case of The Descendants, you might say, I really learned a lot about inherited land and some of the problems with the land disputes in Hawaii and land trusts. You could talk about how you didn't realize large extended families, how they function. So whatever how you change your view or your view on death or whatever happened or rites of passage, make sure you let me know. And if it didn't change your view in any way, explain why. You know, it didn't change my view. I already kind of looked at it this way. So just make sure you do have that concluding observation. Then concluding statements. Develop a conclusion that summarizes your finding from this anthropological case study, right? What have you taken away from this project? And how will you look at representations going forward? Remember, what we're really doing is a critical analysis of a representation. A film has been selected and represented to get emotional response from you, whether it's horror or thrill or genre or emotional. How are the filmmakers using that? And you're really taking this and using that anthropological lens to critique this film and analyze it using anthropological terms, theories, and perspectives. If you have any problems or questions, now is the time to get a hold of me. You're welcome to call me here on Maui. I'm 6 hours behind the East Coast, so don't call me in the middle of the night because I'll think somebody died. But my home number is 808-344-0566. As we say in Hawaii, no hate in the 808. Please feel free to call me if you have any questions or need any clarifications on any of this information that I provided for you here today. Ahui ho kako, over and out from Maui. Aloha.